Is the West behind the Congo War? It wasn't certain until the former president of South Africa revealed the truth about the Congo War. He explained why the West is pretending to end this conflict. The West was hiding something that is finally out now. The detailed discussion clarified things and sent shockwaves across the West.
But the problem for us and problem for the Congolese is that certainly even during the days of Mobutu, they did not want to recognize the Rwandese who were Congolese as Congolese.
It seems that the West will do something to make the situation worse. But what did the former president of South Africa expose? Let's find out. The Democratic Republic of Congo, a land of paradoxes, teems with natural beauty and abundant resources. Yet, beneath all this lies a conflict, history, and identity. The Congo War has affected everyone for decades. However, as the matter receives increasing attention, the relevance of the conflict is highlighted. Some of the information will shock everyone. During his remarks, South Africa's former president provided a detailed analysis of the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. He says many solutions and culprits exist, not just in Rwanda. But what he had to say? For those unaware of the conflict, we will discuss the general topic in the end, but let's first get into what's new. He started his discussion with a solution. The former president stressed the importance of recognizing the Rwandan-speaking population in the Eastern DRC as Congolese citizens. He pointed out that despite residing within Congolese territory, these communities have often faced marginalization and discrimination. By acknowledging their Congolese identity, the government can take steps to ensure their protection and inclusion. He highlighted the governance challenges faced by the Congolese government, particularly in asserting authority over the vast and diverse territory of the DRC. The limited presence of government institutions in remote areas has contributed to a power vacuum, which militant groups like the M23 have exploited. But this is where things take an interesting and shocking turn. The former president addressed the role of external actors, particularly the West, not just Rwanda, in exacerbating the conflict. While some Rwandan-speaking groups seek protection from the Congolese government, others harbor individuals involved in anti-government activities and Rwanda's genocide.
Nobody has spoken to me about what to do about the DRC.
What does the West have to do with this matter? Why is it being dragged? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Well, it's not being dragged, it interfered with itself, and we will later explain how. Anyways, he emphasized the importance of regional cooperation in addressing the conflict. The DRC can work towards a peaceful resolution by engaging with neighboring countries like Rwanda and fostering dialogue. The former president's remarks highlighted the potential for constructive dialogue to mitigate tensions and build trust between nations. But here are a few important questions. Why is the eastern part of the DRC so prone to conflict? Is anything here related to Western influence? The eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo has been mired in conflict for decades, stemming from a complex interplay of geopolitical, ethnic, economic, and historical factors. Situated at the heart of Africa, the eastern DRC holds immense strategic importance due to its proximity to neighboring countries and vital trade routes. This geographic positioning has made it a coveted prize for internal and external actors seeking to exploit its resources and influence the region. And the West loves to exploit it. That's where the West comes in. This was what South Africa's former president was talking about. Various armed groups, often backed by neighboring countries like Rwanda and Uganda, have exploited the DRC's porous borders and weak central authority to pursue their interests. These external actors fuel conflict by supporting proxy militias and engaging in resource extraction, exacerbating existing tensions and rivalries. The DRC is also home to a mosaic of ethnic groups, each with its own cultural identity and historical grievances. In the eastern provinces, where ethnic diversity is particularly pronounced, competition for land, resources, and political power has frequently escalated into violence. The arbitrary borders imposed by colonial powers failed to correspond with ethnic boundaries, sowing the seeds of discord that persist today. Decades of marginalization and discrimination have deepened mistrust between ethnic communities, leading to cycles of reprisal and retaliation. Also, despite being endowed with vast reserves of minerals such as coltan, gold, and diamonds, the Eastern DRC has yet to benefit fully from its natural wealth. Instead, exploiting these resources has fueled conflict as armed groups vie for control over lucrative mining sites and trade routes. The illicit trade in conflict minerals provides a steady revenue stream for armed factions, enabling them to sustain their operations and perpetuate violence. Meanwhile, the local population suffers from environmental degradation and economic exploitation wrought by unregulated mining practices. Then comes the rebel groups in the scene to make things worse. The Eastern DRC is home to a dizzying array of rebel factions, each with its ideological agenda, leadership structure, and territorial ambitions. From long-standing insurgencies like the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, to more recent upstarts like the Alliance of Patriots for a Free and Sovereign Congo, these groups collectively destabilize the region and undermine efforts at peace-building. Some rebel groups, such as the M23 movement, have enjoyed covert backing from neighboring countries seeking to advance their geopolitical interests or destabilize their rivals. This external support prolongs the conflict by providing rebels with arms, funding, and sanctuary across international borders. Historical conflict also plays a part here. Without that, the matter makes no sense. The aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide reverberated across the border into the Eastern DRC as ethnic Hutu militias fled persecution in Rwanda and sought refuge in Congolese territory. This influx of refugees, including perpetrators of genocide, inflamed existing tensions and contributed to cycles of violence and reprisals. The collapse of Mobutu Sese Seko's regime in 1997 left a power vacuum in the DRC, which successive governments have struggled to fill. The erosion of state authority and the proliferation of armed groups in the vacuum have perpetuated a cycle of instability and insecurity. And what is faced by the locals? The protracted conflict in the Eastern DRC has displaced millions of civilians, forcing them to flee their homes in search of safety. Internally displaced persons endure precarious living conditions in overcrowded camps, where access to essential services such as healthcare, education, and clean water is often limited. Humanitarian organizations face significant challenges in delivering aid to conflict-affected areas due to insecurity, logistical hurdles, and political obstacles. Despite these challenges, aid agencies continue to provide life-saving assistance to vulnerable populations, striving to alleviate their suffering amid the chaos of conflict. If this breaks your heart, wait until you know what is happening with the Rwandan people living in Congo. Apart from all the issues we just mentioned, the DRC's weak and dysfunctional governance structures exacerbate the root causes of conflict, fostering impunity, corruption, and a culture of lawlessness. Vested interests often co-opt state institutions, undermining their legitimacy and capacity to deliver basic services to the population. Then comes corruption that permeates every level of society in the DRC, facilitating the looting of public resources and enabling armed groups to finance their activities through illicit means. The symbiotic relationship between corruption and conflict perpetuates a vicious cycle of instability, hindering sustainable peace and development efforts. The West's role is missing here. The West played a very small part when all the other nations were doing wrong with Congo. But here, we will rewind a little more and get to the root to see how prominent the West is. So, let's talk about colonialism. What role did colonialism play in shaping the conflict? Colonialism's grip on the Democratic Republic of the Congo left an indelible mark on its landscape, society, and politics. In their quest for domination and resource extraction, colonial powers exploited existing ethnic divisions and created new ones. By favoring certain ethnic groups over others and implementing divisive administrative structures, colonial rulers sowed the seeds of discord that continue to plague the nation. The legacy of these ethnic divisions persists in contemporary conflict dynamics, with rivalries between ethnic groups fueled by historical grievances and competition for resources. Colonial powers ruthlessly exploited the DRC's abundant natural resources, including rubber, ivory, and minerals, for their economic gain. The extraction of these resources disrupted local economies, led to forced labor, and entrenched a pattern of dependency on external markets. The unequal distribution of wealth resulting from colonial economic policies continues to exacerbate socio-economic disparities in the DRC. This disparity fuels resentment and contributes to grievances that underpin conflicts over resource control and access to economic opportunities. The colonial rule imposed Western values, institutions, and norms onto Congolese society, disrupting existing cultural practices and social structures. This cultural imposition bred resentment and eroded traditional identities, leading to a loss of social cohesion and a sense of alienation among many Congolese communities. The enduring influence of colonial cultural norms and institutions is evident in contemporary social dynamics, with Western values often prioritized over indigenous practices. Reclaiming cultural heritage and fostering cultural pride are essential to healing and reconciliation. Congolese resistance to colonial oppression culminated in the struggle for independence, led by figures like Patrice Lumumba. The anti-colonial movement galvanized a sense of national identity and political consciousness among the Congolese people, laying the groundwork for post-independence politics. The legacy of anti-colonial struggles continues to shape Congolese identity and political dynamics. The memory of resistance movement serves as a rallying point for demands for social justice, accountability, and self-determination in the face of ongoing challenges. Colonial governance structures, characterized by corruption, nepotism, and authoritarianism, imprinted the DRC's institutions. The legacy of weak governance and institutional dysfunction hampers efforts to build a robust and inclusive state capable of addressing the needs of its citizens. The persistence of colonial-era governance practices undermines efforts to promote stability and development in the DRC. Addressing institutional weaknesses and fostering accountable and transparent governance is essential for building a peaceful and prosperous future. International actors, including multinational corporations and colonial powers, were complicit in perpetuating colonial exploitation and oppression in the DRC. Economic interests often took precedence over human rights considerations, leading to the support of exploitative policies that fueled conflict and instability. Now, you know what the former leader of South Africa was talking about the West a lot. Another important factor here is Rwanda and the M23. So, while we have often discussed Rwanda in detail, let's discuss M23 this time. Who is the M23 militia and what drives their actions? The M23 militia, a prominent rebel group in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, presents a complex challenge to peace and stability in the region. Various individuals with diverse backgrounds and motivations lead the M23 movement. Key figures within the organization wield influence over decision-making processes and operational strategies. Their hierarchical command structure enables efficient coordination and execution of activities across the group's ranks. Allegations of external support from neighboring governments and other regional actors have fueled speculation about the M23's ability to sustain its operations. These alleged alliances raise concerns about the broader geopolitical dynamics in the conflict-ridden Eastern DRC. A complex interplay of political, ethnic, and economic factors underpins the M23 militia's actions. While the group's stated objectives may vary, they often center around grievances related to governance, resource allocation, and ethnic representation. The humanitarian fallout of the M23 insurgency is profound, with civilians bearing the brunt of violence, displacement, and human rights abuses. The militia's activities disrupt livelihoods, undermine social cohesion, and exacerbate existing vulnerabilities among affected communities. The M23 insurgency has far-reaching implications for regional stability and cross-border relations. Tensions between neighboring countries, allegations of external interference, and the flow of arms and fighters across borders further complicate efforts to resolve the conflict. Now, returning to the question, what are the challenges Rwandans living in Congolese face? Straddling between their Congolese nationality and Rwandan linguistic and cultural heritage, They find themselves at the intersection of identity contestations, violent conflicts, and educational hurdles. At the heart of the struggle lies the complex issue of identity. The Rwandese-speaking communities, notably the Banyamulenge, are caught in a web of historical categorizations and political rivalries. Perceived as outsiders due to their linguistic and ethnic differences, they yearn for recognition and belonging within their adopted homeland. However, entrenched prejudices and power dynamics often lead to discrimination and exclusion, perpetuating a cycle of marginalization. The idyllic highlands of eastern South Kivu province, where many Rwandese-speaking Congolese reside, have become a battleground for armed groups vying for control. Among them, the notorious M23 militia has specifically targeted these communities, exacerbating their plight. Forced displacement due to escalating violence disrupts not only their livelihoods and social networks, but also robs them of their fundamental right to education, leaving scars that may never fully heal. In the digital age, the spread of hate speech and harmful stereotypes has reached unprecedented levels, with Rwandese-speaking Congolese bearing the brunt of vicious online attacks. Social media platforms serve as breeding grounds for conspiracy theories and anti-Tutsi sentiments, further marginalizing an already vulnerable group. Transboundary networks exploit these platforms to disseminate dehumanizing narratives, amplifying their sense of isolation and insecurity. Education, often hailed as the beacon of hope, presents yet another obstacle for Rwandese-speaking Congolese. The imposition of English as a medium of instruction poses significant challenges for students grappling with linguistic barriers. Written and spoken language errors impede academic performance and perpetuate feelings of inadequacy and alienation. Moreover, the disruption caused by displacement robs them of valuable learning opportunities, perpetuating cycles of poverty and underdevelopment. Behind the mask of resilience lies a community haunted by the ghosts of its past. The legacy of colonialism, genocide, and historical oppression casts a long shadow, shaping the collective psyche of Rwandese-speaking Congolese. Trauma, deeply ingrained in their collective memory, manifests in myriad ways, from heightened vigilance to debilitating anxiety. The question is how the Rwanda and DRC conflict has recently been. The border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo has long been a flashpoint for conflict and tension, characterized by historical, political, and ethnic dynamics. The porous border has facilitated the movement of rebel groups, exacerbating instability in the region. Armed factions like the notorious M23 militia have exploited this porousness to launch attacks and evade capture. The M23 militia, with historical ties to Rwanda, has been a central player in the conflict. Its incursions into Congolese territory have not only caused bloodshed, but have also strained relations between the two neighboring countries. Rwanda and the DRC have frequently engaged in a game of accusations and counter-accusations regarding support for armed groups. Rwanda accuses the DRC of harboring Hutu rebels responsible for attacks on Rwandan soil, while the DRC points fingers at Rwanda for backing M23 rebels. These accusations have heightened tensions and strained diplomatic relations between the two countries. Retaliatory measures, such as flight suspensions and diplomatic summonses, underscore the depth of mistrust and hatred. Incidents of cross-border shelling have not only led to civilian injuries but have also intensified diplomatic tensions. Rwanda and the DRC have traded blame for security breaches, further escalating the situation. Diplomatic channels have witnessed strain, with both countries resorting to tit-for-tat measures in response to perceived provocations. Such actions only serve to exacerbate an already volatile situation. Also, the legacy of colonialism looms large over the relationship between Rwanda and the DRC, perpetuating ethnic tensions and competition for resources in border areas. Arbitrary colonial borders have divided communities and sowed seeds of discord. But here comes the last question that you are all waiting to answer. While the former president highlighted issues, did he also offer solutions? What steps can be taken to promote peace and stability in the region? The former president stresses the importance of prioritizing policies that unequivocally affirm the Congolese identity of Rwandan-speaking communities in the eastern DRC. Ensuring their rights and active inclusion in national decision-making processes is deemed paramount. He highlights the necessity of strengthening governance structures and institutions across the DRC, particularly in remote and conflict-affected areas, to enhance state presence and legitimacy. The former president highlights the importance of prioritizing decentralization and community-led development initiatives to empower local communities and address their specific needs and concerns. Additionally, he emphasizes the urgency of combating corruption and improving transparency in governance processes to rebuild trust between the government and its citizens. In his analysis, the former president stresses the imperative of engaging in constructive dialogue with neighboring countries, particularly Rwanda, to address shared security concerns and promote regional stability. He advocates for establishing joint mechanisms for intelligence sharing and border control to prevent the infiltration of armed groups and illicit activities across borders. Furthermore, the former president urges addressing the root causes of cross-border tensions, such as historical grievances and resource competition, through diplomatic negotiations and confidence-building measures. The former president encourages active participation in regional forums and initiatives to foster cooperation and conflict resolution, such as the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGLR, and the African Union Peace and Security Council. He advocates for supporting regional peacekeeping efforts and initiatives to disarm and demobilize armed groups operating in the eastern DRC. Lastly, he highlights the necessity of investing in cross-border development projects and economic integration initiatives to promote mutual prosperity and reduce incentives for conflict. By implementing these steps, stakeholders can work towards building a more peaceful and stable environment in the eastern DRC and the wider Great Lakes region. This will require a concerted effort from national governments, regional organizations, and international partners to address the root causes of conflict and create sustainable peace and development opportunities for all communities involved. Do you think the Congo War will end automatically if the West withdraws from this matter? What would happen if Congo itself stopped the West from interfering? Let us know in the comment section. Do you think the Congo War will end if no one steps forward to help and only exploits the matter? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.